In the world of outdoor adventures, there are stories that thrill you, and then there are stories that serve as absolutely chilling cautionary tales. Today, we're going deep into one of the most infamous, a story of family, a terrible miscalculation, and a desperate rescue attempt that absolutely captivated a nation. This is the explainer on the tragedy of the Nutty Putty Cave.
Okay, so before we dive in, I have to give you a serious heads up, one that comes directly from our source material. The events we're about to cover are really intense, and ultimately they're tragic. It's a tough story to get through, so please just be mindful of that as we go forward.
Every story like this has a beginning, and this one starts with something we can all relate to, right? A family getting together for the holidays, looking for a little bit of adventure. So let's set the scene for what was supposed to be a fun trip.
So picture this. It's November 24th, 2009. A 26-year-old medical student and new dad named John Edward Jones is back home in Utah for Thanksgiving. He, his brother Josh, and a bunch of friends and family decide, hey, let's go explore the local Nutty Putty Cave. For them, it was supposed to be this fun, nostalgic thing, getting back to that caving they loved as kids.
But here's the thing. Nutty Putty wasn't just any old cave. Oh no, it had a reputation, a bad one. It was known for these ridiculously tight, challenging passages. In fact, it had been shut down for years because so many people had to be rescued from it. It had only been reopened for about 8 months before John's trip, and this time with all these new, stricter rules that were meant to stop exactly what was about to happen.
So the group heads into the cave at around 8 o'clock at night. The first hour, everything goes great. But then, that sense of adventure kicks in. John decides he wants to find one of the cave's most famous tight spots. And that one decision, well, it led to a fatal mistake.
John and his brother Josh split off to find a passage they thought was the famous birth canal, but they made a critical error. The tight spot John squeezed himself into, it wasn't the birth canal at all. It was a totally unmapped section, a dead end that rescuers later called the corkscrew. He literally had no idea he was crawling headfirst into a trap. As he pushed himself forward, the passage just got tighter and tighter until he realized he couldn't back up. He slid forward headfirst into this vertical crack in the rock that was just 18 inches wide and 10 inches high. At that point, there was no going back. He was stuck. Now, to really get a picture of this, think about the size of a regular laptop screen. That's the opening he was in. He had wedged himself into a space barely big enough for his head and chest, with absolutely zero room to move. And this is the part that is it's brutal. His position, he was completely upside down, head down, at this steep 70-degree angle. His arms were pinned against his body. He was, for all intents and purposes, totally and completely trapped. And if you want to understand just how bad the situation was, check this out. 5 years before this, a teenager named Brock Clark got stuck in the exact same spot. It took them 14 grueling hours to get him out. But John was 6 feet tall and about 90 kilos. He was significantly bigger than Brock. From the absolute get-go, the odds were just stacked against him. John's brother Josh was the first one to find him. All he could see were John's feet sticking out of this hole in the cave floor. He tried to pull him out, but he just couldn't budge him. Realizing this was serious, Josh scrambled out of the cave to call for help. And what came next was this massive 27-hour rescue operation against truly impossible odds. So let's just run through the timeline here, so you can feel the weight of this. After his brother tried and failed, the call went out. It took a full 9 hours for the very first rescuer to even make voice contact with John. For the next 9 hours, this huge team worked in this cramped, awful space to set up this complicated rope and pulley system. And then at hour 19, just when it felt like maybe, just maybe this could work, disaster.
You have to understand, the clock was ticking, and for a very specific reason. Being upside down like that, it's incredibly dangerous. Doctors on the scene figured he had maybe 8 to 10 hours before his body would give out. See, his heart was having to work against gravity to pump blood out of his brain, and all his organs were being crushed. The biggest risk was sudden cardiac arrest.
The plan they came up with was, well, it was a Hail Mary. Rescuers had to crawl, one by one, through these tight spaces, dragging heavy drills and gear with them. The idea was to drill into the rock above John, set up a system of anchors and pulleys, attach ropes to his feet, and then just painstakingly pull him out. It was really their only shot.
And after 19 agonizing hours, it started to work. They actually lifted John a few feet. It was enough that he could see his rescuer, a guy named Ryan. They gave him a drink. For one brief moment, there was this tiny glimmer of hope. And then, the anchor bolts they had drilled into the soft, crumbly cave wall, it broke.
The pulley system failing was just catastrophic. John slid all the way back down, probably even tighter than he was before. And his rescuer, Ryan, was actually hit by the falling gear and knocked out for a second. That single moment, that one failure, it just shows you the insane risk involved in this whole thing. An operation that, by the end, involved over 120 different people, all trying to save one man.
This quote from one of the lead rescuers, man, it just says it all. After the pulley failed, John's condition got a lot worse, and he stopped responding. They tried to set everything up again, but it was obvious the situation had changed. All that hope that had kept them going for nearly a full day, it was gone.
So after almost 27 hours of being trapped upside down, the rescue effort officially changed gears. But the decision that was made next would seal the fate of both John Jones and the Nutty Putty Cave itself forever.
A paramedic finally made it deep into the cave and, just before midnight on November 25th, had to confirm that John had passed away. And at that point, the authorities were faced with this absolutely gut-wrenching decision. Trying to get his body out of that impossible position would put even more rescuers in extreme danger.
So after speaking with John's heartbroken family, the state made a decision that's almost unheard of. They decided to seal the entire cave, permanently. They filled the entrance with concrete. It was the only way they felt they could guarantee a tragedy like this would never, ever happen again. The Nutty Putty Cave became John's tomb.
You know, the story of John Jones just leaves us with this really profound and deeply uncomfortable question. Those 120 people who fought for 27 hours straight, they were heroes, no question about it. But their story forces us to ask, at what point does a hopeful rescue turn into a high-risk recovery? And when does that recovery itself just become too dangerous to even try? There are no easy answers here. And that haunting uncertainty, well, that's the tragic legacy of the Nutty Putty Cave.